Behind me in bumper car yellow, the Renault R5 that we already know. We drove this at the press launch in the hills around Monaco, but I wanted to take the opportunity to test how this car performs in the real world, because I don't live in Monaco and I live in the Netherlands, so there's certainly no hills around here. And this car still has to work in the real world. So in this video, we're going to find out if it actually does and if this is the one to get, because this is not the only retro-inspired car out there. Of course, you got Mini that's been doing this for years. The same goes for Fiat, for example. And of course, there's the bigger brother, the Alpine A290. But this R5 is a bit of a first one for Renault. And there's more models coming that are so retro-inspired, with a lot of nods to the past, but of course, a lot of modern technology underneath. Starting here in the front though, I think we can all agree that this is a huge departure from all the gray and white boring lease cars you see out there on your daily commute. This is something that stands out, and this is also for people who want to stand out a little bit. Because obviously you're not going to buy a bright yellow car if you don't want to at least make some kind of statement. There's also a Kermit the Frog green version available, but if that's all a bit too extreme for you, you can also just get some regular colors. But I think this, in particular, this yellow one looks excellent. It's a small car, just under 4 meters long, so it sits between the Renault Zoe and the Clio. So that makes it nice and compact, a typical city urban car. And it's electric with about 50 kilowatt hours of usable battery space. You should get around 400-ish kilometers WLTP range. So this makes it the perfect first car, the perfect urban car maybe even to buy. And especially in this bright yellow with this retro looks, I think it is at least a big statement, and it's really something to choose. So at the moment we're charging, because this is still an electric car that needs to be plugged in every once in a while. So that's a good moment to have a look around the cockpit of this Renault R5. First of all, the colors and the materials, that's of course all sustainable, recycled jeans and all that kind of stuff, which for the enthusiast is great, but you can always debate if that is for you or not. I think it's a good effort for manufacturers to do this sustainable kind of material in an effort to be in overall a greener company. So that's a good thing. And of course, there's a huge retro vibe here with the dash and the stitching and all that kind of stuff, which is kind of cool. The big thing here is that you really feel that the outside matches the inside. When you see the outside of this car, of course, you're like, oh, mini pocket rocket sports car, cool vibe and all that stuff. And if you would get in here and it would be a regular Renault, that would be a bit disappointing. But they've really done a good job in making the outside match with the inside. So you get that like, yes, let's go kind of feel as soon as you sit down. So that is really nice and really well judged. Looking around, there's a lot of familiar Renault hardware. Obviously, why not reuse the bits that you already have? And that is nice, because there's a lot of good stuff. The driver's display, the infotainment screen, the steering wheel, all those things are very familiar and work really well. But there's also a few things that don't work really well, chief among which is this toothbrush here that is the gear selector, or the drive selector rather. We've seen that in other Renault products as well, and I didn't like it there either. It is a complete afterthought. This is a button that you can put anywhere in the car, and I think they forgot about it or something, because somebody was like, oh my god, where do we put the drive selector? Let's just stick it in the middle of the steering column. Not realizing that there's already so much stuff going on here on the right side of the steering wheel, with the wipers, the media controller, the normal buttons on the steering wheel, and your multi-sense drive mode selector. That it's too busy, it's too full back here, and it's not necessary to put this here too. In this car's bigger brother, the Alpine A290, it's integrated here in the middle console. Obviously that is a car with a very different design philosophy in general here on the inside. But you know, putting a few buttons here would not be the end of the world, and also not a crazy design exercise. This is not good looking, and it is just also impractical with all the stuff going on here already. That said though, it is semi-handy when you're maneuvering back and forward into a parking garage, for example, and you want to change direction quickly. It is sort of where your hand lands. So as far as that goes, I suppose it makes some kind of sense. Something that has been done really well is the button for your driving aids. It is something you have to set in the menu once as your personal profile. And with a button here on the left, you can select and activate that profile. So for me, it is the lane departure system and the speed warning and the traffic sign recognition. I want those things off. So I set that up once, map it to that button, and when I set off, because obviously every time you start the car, those things reset, I just press this button twice to select and confirm, and then it is activating my personal profile and those things are off. So that's fantastic, and I think this Renault implementation is the best I've seen so far in all the cars that I've tested in the past year. Because you know, when you're leaving your house in the morning and you're fiddling with the screen all the while, there's bikes and toddlers and babies running around. It's not a good situation, and it's annoying because you have to do it every single time. Here it's just 2 presses of a physical button and you're off to the races. So that is excellent. In front of me, the steering wheel is a bit square for my taste, but it does work. Although when you go through corners and you let the wheel slide through your hands, it is a bit annoying. I would have preferred a slightly rounder wheel, but it does look cool. The buttons are, the one-piece sort of half capacitive ones. Not ideal, and they are piano black, so they will be constantly smudgy, but they do work and you do get used to them. So that is something, I suppose. Normal stalks here behind the steering wheel for your indicators and your wiper settings. And through the wheel, you have your driver's display that we know from other Renault products. Works fine. You can put your navigation and your charge and so on there. Everything you really want from a driver's screen, and it is a full screen as well. So no lights or warning hazard lights on the sides. Moving to the middle, we have the Google-based infotainment system. Works great in all Renault products, really. It's smart that Renault said, no, we're not going to reinvent the wheel ourselves. We're going to base it on Google, put a bit of Renault sauce over it, and everybody's happy. Works really well. It's a nice system to work with, easy to find things. The graphics, you know, you can always debate about that, but it works well, it's fast, and all is good there. Below we have some square ventilation. That is obviously a nod to the lights in the front. And then some physical buttons for all your climate control. Excellent, basically the same kind of setup as we had in several of the Stellantis products that we drove recently. Just simple buttons up and down for the temperature, up and down for the fan speed, and a few settings that you constantly use. Great, well done, good solution, real buttons, you know, no harm, and everybody understands how this works, no capacitive nonsense. You can operate this by touch. Very good. Finishing up the middle tunnel, we have the parking brake and the auto hold down here, a little square that you can't really use for anything. Some inductive charging, USB and 12-volt sockets, cup holders, and the armrest, because there's nothing else going on here because it's a completely clean middle tunnel. The armrest is pretty small, but it is also all plastic in there, so you don't want to throw anything rattling in there, I think. And that is your hardware. Finishing up with the seats, very comfortable. You can talk about the color and the design, obviously. Maybe not for everybody, but I feel very comfortable in here. And it's kind of nice that the design obviously matches the outside. The seats are good, comfortable and supportive, even though they are fully manual, so no electric adjustments here, except for the lumbar support. But that is fine, and they are comfortable also for longer journeys because I fit fully in the seat. They are not any kind of bucket situation or anything. They're sportier seats, I would suppose. But they're not, it's not like you're strapped in completely and you can't reach the parking meter anymore. So that's good. All around, I feel pretty comfortable here for a longer journey as well. Longer journeys you'll be making by yourself mostly, because behind me there is basically no space for adults. I think you can fit a few kids in there if they're not too tall. But my kids are 8 and 11 and they are already borderline comfortable back there. Certainly not for adults. Obviously we got to do a little bit of driving in this Renault 5, and driving we do. We drove it between Nice and Monaco in the mountains on some quite challenging roads. That was of course a lot of fun, but in the real world I don't have any challenging mountain roads around my house, so this car also has to work in that context. And working it certainly does. It is a nice compact little car, which is a lot of fun to drive. The whole driving experience sort of matches the outside, just like the inside matches the outside. So that is actually very well judged from Renault, that those things are all in line with each other. So as soon as you sit down and hit the gas pedal for the first time, it's a very positive feedback that you get from the car. And I know that sounds a bit journalisty, blah blah, but every input that you get back from the car feels very nice. It feels like the car wants to be driven. There's often, especially with electric cars, they're big, they're heavy, and you're sort of detached from the driving experience, which is fine. I mean, if you're just looking for something to get from A to B, then that's okay. Not every car can be fully engaging, but this car makes you feel like, hey, let's go for a nice drive. And of course, here on the highway, that is slightly less relevant than in the mountains around Monaco, but that makes you enjoy the car in almost any situation. Now, by no means I mean that I'm weaving in and out of city traffic like some kind of hooligan. That's absolutely not the case. But the square stance of the car, the power delivery, the way you sit sort of deep in the car, low to the road, and the chunky steering wheel in your hands and the view out, it's all very much that positive experience like, hey, yes, I'm gonna enjoy this drive. Part of that is the steering feel and what you get back from the car. You have a good sense of what the car is doing, where the front wheels are and where the car wants to go. So that's really nice. But also the powertrain, it's only 150 horsepower, so it's not a lot. But let's say at city speeds, between 20 and 50, between 30 and 60, those are speeds where this powertrain really shines. It's not like you're going to be some kind of street race, traffic light sprinter or anything, but it's, you know, that electric pickup, that instant acceleration, that torque, that's so nice at those speeds that you can just go around the corner a little bit, cross an intersection, catch a traffic light, and so on. So that's great, and that really also again adds to the enjoyment of driving this car. Add to that the most lease cars that you see driving around these days are all boring black, gray and white, and then this paint bomb of a car comes by. I think that puts a smile on a lot of people's faces, and it's a car that attracts a bit of attention due to the way it looks. You know, you see a lot of people pointing when you're driving around, also here on the highway, like, oh hey, cool. So it's not something people necessarily recognize, but especially in this bright yellow, it's something that stands out a lot, and that's nice. Here on the highway, it feels slightly less at home, even though it's a perfectly comfortable car to drive. I got my cruise control, my navigation, everything set just right. Air conditioning, nice, and it is a pleasant car to cover some distance in. Renault says about 400 kilometers WLTP. Wow, that sounds about right, looking at my current state of charge of 80% with 300 kilometers to go. So in the real world, I'd say 350-ish, depending a little bit on how you drive, should be realistic. And luckily it is also 13 degrees at the moment, so we've had winter, obviously, that still has a big impact on batteries and range. But now that the temperatures are getting a little bit higher, that range should be extended slightly as well. Interesting point is probably who this car is for. I think it's quite a particular audience. Obviously you have cars like the Mini or the Fiats, for example, that have the same sort of retro vibe as this car. So that's something you have to like if you want to purchase this car. It is a bit smaller than a Clio, but a bit bigger than a Zoe, like I already mentioned. So I wouldn't necessarily pick this as my daily driver to drive my whole family around. But it is a great first car, for example. It's a great car if your kids are already big enough and you can have them in the front, for example, or a great secondary car. I think all those categories this car fits in just well. There's not really that much space in the back for child seats and all those bulky kid carriers. You know, it's not impossible, obviously, but I don't think this is the most practical solution, especially not considering that this one costs 36,500 euros here in the Netherlands. And for that money, you can buy cars that are significantly bigger and also cars that have more power if you would like so. So I think those things considered, this is not your family car, but I think this is a cool first car if you are into this whole retro vibe. And then underneath you have very reliable Renault technology with some excellent Renault hardware in a cool and stylish package. So I think all around this is a great move by Renault. And obviously it's going to be followed up by a few more models that are that have this sort of retro touch, which is cool. I like that. Anything to fundamentally complain about? Well, you can always argue for a bigger battery and more range and more power and all those things. Yeah, I suppose that's true, but I don't think that's really the point of this car. You know, if you add another 100 horsepower to this car, it wouldn't say it becomes undrivable, but then you have to throw bigger brakes at it, better steering, better damping, and it gets complicated quickly. And for what? For who? You know, this is a car, especially here in the Netherlands, that is great in and around a city and in between cities, not some kind of track racing monster. That's not what this is for. And if you want the extremer version of this platform, you can always go to the Alpine A290 that we actually will drive soon as well, which sort of starts where this car ends in terms of power and handling and all those things. So I don't think more power or more range and all those things are necessarily something that will make this car better. I think if you view it for what it is, a cool, fun little car that gets you around town, that gets your kids to swimming lessons and to tennis practice, then it is just fine. And the power is adequate for those circumstances as well. So I think in conclusion, we can say that if you are into this retro styling, this is a great car to consider next to, for example, a Mini or a Fiat. And if you're not into this kind of styling, then clearly this is not the car for you. Luckily, Renault has a lot of other cars available without those retro touches. I'm interested to know though, let me know in the comments, would you pick this over a Mini, for example, or would you go for something completely different? And if you would pick this one, would you go for this canary yellow, Kermit the Frog green, or would you go for a, let's say, boring color like black or white? Interesting to know. Write it down in the comments. So that's all I got for this video. Thank you very much for watching. A sub to the channel is always appreciated, and then you will not miss that video of the Alpine A290 that is coming up soon. And of course, a thumbs up is always appreciated. And if there's anything you would like to see different or improved, also let us know. For now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Cheers!